Hey everybody, this is Molly Kay. I have a really important story for you. I know you say every story you tell is important. I'm for real. The story is important. It is about EMPs and the prospects of us having a national blackout. The story is written by someone who is currently a U.S. Marine Corps, and it is posted on the U.S. Naval Institute's website. It was written this month, which is timely because it is taking into context all the different things that are actually going on around the nation. And so, I just want to touch on it because a lot of times, we talk about different things and we don't necessarily address the logistical aspects for the U.S. military and how they would protect us on the home front if there was an attack here in the U.S. We just kind of think, oh, we're here, nothing can ever happen. Well, this piece is pretty scary because it lets you know how unprepared the American military is, but it also poses the question as to why, because they've had plenty of time to study and analyze their weaknesses and they chose not to address the deficiencies. So, after I read this, I was kind of wondering, okay, so is this like inside, is, treason? Like, what is happening? So, anyway, I will let you decide about why. Hopefully, I have a really intelligent audience and you all use your critical thinking skills, but let's get into it. Russia and China have the ability to destroy the US power grid and degrade military capabilities with a non kinetic first strike, not only through the electronic magnetic effects of nuclear and non nuclear weapons, but also by means such as cyber attacks. The sun could similarly destroy all or parts of the system through a natural event. An electromagnetic pulse, which is an EMP, and I'll be saying EMP going forward, is the electromagnetic radiation from a nuclear explosion caused by Compton recoil electrons and photoelectrons from photons scattered in the materials of the nuclear device or a surrounding medium. It can also be caused by non nuclear weapons, though their effects are usually more geographically limited. The resulting electric and magnetic fields may couple with electrical or electronic systems to produce damaging current and voltage surges. Depending on the type of burst, it can cause power spikes ranging from several hundred volts per meter up to more than 1 million volts per meter. Furthermore, it can cause component or subsystem burnout or degradation and system upset. A coronal mass ejection, which is a CME, is an explosive outburst or solar wind plasma from the sun. The blast of a CME typically carries roughly 1 billion tons of material at speeds on the order of hundreds of kilometers per second. A CME contains radiation and powerful magnetic fields. These blasts originate in magnetically disturbed regions of the corona, the sun's uppermost atmosphere, and can have effects similar to a man made EMP. A high altitude nuclear weapon detonated 25 miles above North America would destroy most US electronics, high voltage transformers, vehicles, and other electrical machinery. Now, this is what is important and what I want everybody to realize. And that was the huge scare with a lot of people with the balloons flying all over the country. Um, although one has been identified as China, so they claimed it. We don't know what the other things were that were flying because they really haven't been identified. But the point is that this balloon floated all the way across the entire United States. And they apparently surveyed whatever areas they wanted to survey, which is likely a lot of the places where sensitive materials are kept. I will just say it that, say it like that. But in the event that this happens again, or Russia and China decide that this is the um, way that they're going to kick off the war, we won't have any power. Our electronics will not work. Your TV is not going to work. Your phone won't work. Your tablet won't work. Transformers that are in your community keeping the power going, they will go down. They will burn up. They may even catch on fire. They won't work. You won't have any power. Your cars, which run by chips and are electrical, they have, a different type of battery, they're likely not going to work. So if there is an EMP strike, you will not be able to get home wherever you are. So you better have you some hiking shoes. Hopefully you are not in a place where you're going to be stuck in traffic or on a highway where your car just instantly stops. And if you work in the industry or you rely on some other type of machinery, it won't work either. A CME, depending on the severity, would produce a similar effect. So, regardless of whether it's a nuclear weapon or if it is a sun event, and I don't know if you realize what's going on with the earth and the sun, people are watching the sun because a lot of different things are happening with it. Currently, 99% of all military bases rely on the civilian electric grid, which is dangerous and terrible. So that means if our power is screwed up, it's highly likely most of the military base will also be screwed up as well because we have never prepared our military bases for an MP strike and for military bases to survive regardless of whatever happens to the civilian electric grid. While many analysts consider a nuclear generated EMP unlikely, it is not the only threat. Recent overflights of balloons from China have been at altitudes high enough to cause a nuclear EMP. The late Dr. Peter Vincent Pry was the executive director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, a congressional advisory board dedicated to protecting the United States from EMP, cyber attack, terrorist attacks of mass destruction, and other threats critical to civilian infrastructure on an accelerated basis. According to the task force, U.S. plans to harden the electrical infrastructure against the high altitude electromagnetic pulse, which is called HEMP, non nuclear electromagnetic pulse, which I'll call NIMP, or CME, are virtually non existent. This basically means we do not have any plan or infrastructure in place that is secure to prevent or lessen the impact of a high altitude electromagnetic pulse, NIMP or CME. In 2008, the report of the Commission to Assess Threat to the United States from Electromagnetic Pulse Attack reported on the effects of an EMP. The report concluded that 1 year after a large-scale EMP or CME, 9 of every 10 Americans would be dead from a variety of causes stemming from the attack. Let me tell you, this is the thing that made the hair stand up on my arms. They say 9 out of every 10. And while it is an estimate, just think of it. If there are 10 people in the line, 9 of those people are going to die, and only one of those people will live within a year of an EMP strike because you won't be able to go to the grocery store. You won't have access to medication. You won't have access to clean water. You won't be able to leave the city because if you have a late model car, if you don't have an old car with a carburetor and that runs by fuel, you won't be able to move. Most people aren't fit and they can't go anyplace. Public transportation won't work. Jobs won't work. So if you don't have a means to take care of yourself, You won't be getting an income. Supply chains will be down, so there won't be any stores coming. Um, they won't be opening because they won't get any supplies because everything is computerized and the computers won't work. There won't be any power. So you can't go into the store and buy anything. They won't be able to keep food cold. They won't be able to get food to you. So if you don't have a way to live off the grid for any extended period of time prior to the grid going down, you're likely not going to make it. You won't be able to buy a property and be like, oh, I'm just going to move to whatever place. That won't be happening unless you have satellite phone, some other means of communication. And then there'll be lawlessness because there'll be a breakdown of society. Police aren't going to go to work if their house, they can leave their houses undefended to defend a government that didn't care to protect them. Um, the military, they'll be too busy fighting, and I don't know for how long. They may abandon post if there's no food or plans to protect their own family. They may just ditch the military and be like, I'm protecting my people. So it's a scary situation. And then people don't have non-perishable foods in their homes. They do like Walmart. They have a just-in-time practice. They don't go to the store on a regular basis and get everything that they need to prepare for an extended period of time, and they don't have enough food in their house to last, a year or 2 years. They just kind of go to the store when they get paid, if then. Some people go to the store every day. So it's gonna be real in the field. If you are not thinking and preparing for this, I would suggest you should, and you do so, because these balloon tests are not just by accident. And if you've been following me for an extended period of time on Medium, my track record is pretty darn good. And so I've been telling you about what's coming, and I can tell you these politicians don't care anything about you. They're not going to save you. They don't care. They are gone. They're bought and sold. They're working for whoever they have to work for. And when this war happens, we're going to be casualties of it. So just make sure that you are preparing. Okay, in August 2021, Prize Task Force released Blackout Warfare, attacking the U.S. electric power grid, a revolution in military affairs, and yet still no action to harden the grid has taken place. And I'll put a link to these articles and reports in the description, or I'll include this, and it has hyperlinks in it. If you read it, you'll be able to get the links. Chinese and Russian military doctrines outline the use of hemp weapons. And so, if you don't understand what this means, it means their war strategy includes using electromagnetic pulses on us high altitude, which means it would come from a balloon or some other type of, you know, method. But they could, center it across the entire United States. They could do one half of the country. They could do the East Coast. They could do the West Coast. They could do the middle part of the country. They could do whatever they want to do to start the war. It would essentially start the war. But just understand, starting the war means we're going to be the casualties of the war. So in order to endure to the end, you have to prepare. Both states, which means China and Russia, possess the capability to produce not only hemp attacks, but also NIMP attacks in conjunction with cyber attacks. As Blackout Warfare notes, Washington does not understand the threat from EMP CME, focusing almost entirely on cybersecurity, largely ignoring the other major vectors against electrical grids, sabotage, and EMP. So I don't know if you know what's been going on with a lot of the electrical grids across the country. But people have been running into them, shooting them up, doing all kinds of stuff, just random ones. North Carolina and Washington, and I can't remember if it happened in California. It's happened a couple of times, but they've been testing the grid, testing these sabotage attacks numerous times. A couple of times it was driven into, sometimes it was shot up. But my point is that each time nobody knows who does anything. It's just done and folks just walk away. No, there's no recording, or if there is, nobody ever talks about what happened. So I'm saying all this to say that it's suspect. Okay. So combined arms cyber warfare, as described in the military doctrines of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, may use combinations of cyber sabotage and ultimately nuclear EMT attacks to impair the United States quickly and decisively by blacking out large portions of the electrical grid and critical infrastructures. So, if they do this, we can't fight. Our militaries can't communicate with each other. We as citizens can't communicate with each other. We would essentially starve to death. And we would die because we couldn't get food, because most of us don't grow our own food. We rely on the supply chain. And we wouldn't have clean drinking water because drinking water hinges on the water treatment facilities, which require electricity. If there is no electricity, you can't get water to come out your tap, and you can't get clean water anyway. So if you don't have ways to clean and purify your water by like water straws, water for water purification systems, water filters, or you don't know how to camp and build your own water filter, et cetera, you're doomed essentially. So this is why they say, 2/3 of the population would die basically within a year, because you won't be able to survive. So if you can't survive, you're gonna starve to death. You're gonna die from dehydration. You'll die from lack of medication or infection, or you're gonna die because you will get killed trying to take from somebody in order to feed your family. So in order to avoid as best you can any of those scenarios, you can plan today. Although an executive order coordinating national resilience to electromagnetic pulses exists and is intended to make national EMP preparedness a priority, very little progress has been made. So to me, that says it's a setup. I'll just say that. All right, I'm going to scroll down to EMP after effects, because this is what I think I wanted to. Oh, let me read this before I move on. The U.S. electrical infrastructure has suffered 721 known physical and cyber attacks in the past decade. One such attack was an attack by gunmen in 2013 in Metcalfe, California. According to Pry, the attackers were never caught and no one was ever arrested. Multiple government agencies were concerned with the attack. Concerned the attack was a dress rehearsal for a larger scale attack. 1 year later, the Metcalfe substation was hit again when a fence was breached and tools were stolen. I remember this story. Nothing has been done to increase the security posture of the compound. And in December 2022, substations in North Carolina, Washington State, and Oregon were attacked in manners similar to Metcalfe. So, NIMP weapons. Anyone can manufacture NIMP weapons using commercial equipment and designs from the internet. The weapons can produce upward of 100,000 volts per meter, albeit over short distances. High-powered microwave weapons are also a threat and can project EMPs out to 10 kilometers. Suitcase EMP generators can even be purchased online, no license required. A coordinated attack on the U.S. power grid against multiple facilities with such weapons would threaten the security of millions of Americans and the military. And Russia, in particular, has demonstrated an ability to shut off its adversaries' lights through the use of cyber attacks. And EMP after effects. Given this information, what might a long term blackout look like? This is important, so listen up. If the grid were to be attacked tomorrow, how would leaders command and control their Marines? I'm going to ask you, how would you lead and command your household? How would Camp Pendleton communicate with Camp Lejeune? How will you communicate with your relatives and your neighbors in your community? How would you communicate if you're in one place and your relatives live in different states? What if you work and commute back and forth to work? What's the plan? How would the Marine Corps communicate with the Navy? That is important because you want to know how the military is going to communicate in order to protect the home front and protect the citizens. How would a mechanic fix a vehicle without a step-by-step instruction on a computer or a computer-aided diagnostic tool? How much reserve fuel, water, and food does each Marine Corps base have stored? Would leaders be able to keep their Marines, sailors, contractors, and families fed? And the reason there's a focus here on Marines because Marines are infantry. And if you don't know anything about the military, I'll just tell you the Marines are the first ones they send in to do the dirty work. So if there's anything that's going to happen on the home front, the Marines are the ones that you're going to see in the street first. And trust me, you don't want to mess around with no Marines. The Marines and the Army, but Marines primarily, they they different. I'll just say that. And if they're going to be protecting us at home, then they would also need resources. And this whole section is about resources. Would leaders be able to keep their Marines, sailors, contractors, and their families fed? And it's important to mention families because oftentimes what you have is people will say, "Oh, we'll have police will protect us, military will protect us," but people not protecting you if they're not getting paid and if their families are in danger. And I'm just gonna tell you straight up, people will abandon post to go take care of their own family, and that's just life. If the government doesn't care enough about the soldiers to make sure they are fed, to make sure their families are okay while they are fighting and serving and doing their job that they signed up to do, they're going to abandon post. So then if they abandon post, we are on our own. And so this is, why I felt like this article was timely and important. How long would it take before they would be at the front gates? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped something. What about the local civilian population? How long would it be before they would be at the front gates of the military base begging for or even demanding food? And y'all know, black folks might not do it, but y'all know the pilgrims will. The angry Saxons do not care. They think they are entitled to everything. And even though they don't believe nothing that nobody tells them. If things get rough, that's going to be one of the things that they know they can do. They're so accustomed to going to places and getting whatever it is that they need. They're not going to sit around and let their family starve. And they're going to go places and demand, stuff from the resources from the government because that's just what they do. The government works for them. It don't work for us black folks, but it works for them. I'm gonna just tell black people, don't y'all go to the military base and ask for nothing. Y'all best get y'all some salmon and spam and bologna and dry nuts and whatever else you can and stick up in your house. The one thing that you do not want to do, Negro, is go to the military and ask for anything. And when I tell you that, I'm saying it with the most sincerity, do not approach a military base if you are black and ask for nothing, because they have orders to do stuff to and with us. And I cannot get into it here. I will have to do a discussion on Rumble, but trust me, the one thing that you do not want to be doing if you are black and live in America is asking the government for help. I promise you, you will regret it. How many would flee to check in on their families? Answering these questions requires significant thought and planning. A coordinated physical attack on multiple targets and facilities. I'm sorry, there was a loud vehicle going by. From a state or a non state actor must be considered an imminent threat. An attack on an unprotected civilian grid could result in a long term blackout event. Since 99% of the military, listen, 99% of the military depends on the civilian electric grid and food and water infrastructure, the military could severely be crippled. So, this means the military does not have their own food supply chain. They rely on the civilian supply chain to feed them. So, the military never developed agriculture or, food systems so that they don't have to rely on our systems should our systems go down. So when our system goes down, the military won't have anything either. Now, the thing that they have over us is the government can declare martial law and take charge of every resource that they need to. They can take over the water systems, they can take over food, they can take over farmers' farms and demand that a certain percentage of food, if not all of it, be redirected to the military, and we get nothing. So, this is why it's really important for you to have food and water in your homes, medication, and anything that you could possibly need so that if this situation happened, you're not relying on the grocery store. Now, granted, also keep in mind that if you have a surplus and they know you have a surplus, they can come to your house and take your stuff. So don't get it twisted. If you have too much, the government can be like, I'm taking that. I'm gonna leave you a little bit, or I might not leave you nothing because I don't care about you. So don't get it twisted. Last but not least, your politicians will be taken care of. They have bunkers underground with so much food is stored for them. They will never be hungry. You will be out here dead and they'll be slinking around in their caves, waiting for things to clear so they can come back out and keep ruling. All right, totalitarian and authoritarian states see international relations as a zero sum game in which there are winners and losers, the living and the dead. Economics is not the highest priority for totalitarian states. The highest priority is total control over the world, whatever the cost, because they believe that any nation not their slave is a potential threat and war is inevitable. And while people think America has been, a democracy, for Black people, to me, it's been a totalitarian state because they've been at war with us since we've been here. And, this is kind of how they look at us. You know, they want to control us at whatever cost. And they believe that, we Black people, African Americans, um, are slaves. And as long as we're slaves, we're not a threat. But the moment that we rise up or wake up, we become a threat and they have to go to war with us. This is something that white people have not been accustomed to. And this is something that white people are going to be shocked at because the nation is going to turn on them. The nation is going to let them down. the nation is going to treat them like they are a black person, and they are not ready for that. So, black people, we built for tough times. Hey, we know what it's going to be like. White people, not so much. So, it's just interesting to see how they are concerned now, but not concerned enough to change and not concerned enough to do reparations. But judgment is coming to Babylon, and Babylon is going to have to pay for their indifference. Um, we're getting ready to see if we have an EMP strike or any type of physical conflict on this soil, you're going to see the fruit of indifference and hatred. And it's going to be disturbing, but I expect it. The highest priority is total control over the world, whatever the cost, because they believe that any nation not their slave is a potential threat and war is inevitable. Totalitarian states want to be the last man living and make everyone else a slave or dead. Now, this is really important because totalitarian states want to be the last man living and make everyone else a slave or dead. So understand, if you survive after the grid goes down and you survive war, whatever happens here, you're going to be a slave to somebody else. That includes you two white people. Y'all going to be slaves too. So if there's an EMP strike, just understand it's not going to be pretty for any of us. We probably going to wish we died. But for those of us who are chosen and we understand that we are protected by the Most High, you know, we just put our faith in Him and let Him fight our battles. We've been through a lot worse. Pharaoh has chased us, and the Lord has come to fight our battles. So we just gonna have to trust in Him to lead us through this. Totalitarian states want to be the last man living and make everyone else a slave or dead. That is why they are willing to do anything to crush their enemies and win. EMP/cyber warfare, what I term blackout warfare, is a relatively easy, low risk, even benign form of warfare compared to all out nuclear, biological, and/or chemical warfare, all of which Moscow and Beijing are prepared and willing to do if they can win. So understand, you know, I personally believe they will use the EMP strike first because both countries are willing to play the long game to bring the country to its knees and bring us to our knees. Um, so I don't. I'm offering you my 2 cents. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not a prophet. I don't do read tarot cards. I don't know anything. I just kind of watch and see what things are looking like. And so that's kind of my 2 cents. If Pry is correct, these leaders do not need a why to launch a full-scale combined arms blackout on the United States. They are biding their time for when. And that's my 2 cents. I kind of feel this the same way that this prior person does. It's not a matter of when, if, it's when. And they play the long game, both the bear and the dragon. So get ready and get real. This threat will materialize sooner or later, probably sooner. Leaders need to take it seriously and begin to act now. As for the Navy and Marine Corps, they and the other armed services should introduce existing technologies for electromagnetic hardening of infrastructure and systems for military equipment bases, and vehicles as quickly as possible. Senior commanders can submit a universal needs statement to their chains of command, and small unit commanders can begin to study how to command and control in an electronically degraded environment, useful in a variety of possible contexts. Hardening efforts begin to take place in phases based on budgets for the year. A deputy executive director for the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security notes three specific psychological factors with regard to total grid failure: human desperation, starvation, and living without rule of law. And so, that's again another concern of mine is when people are desperate, how would they act? They put all these zombie apocalypse movies out, so they already know how people are going to react. They created these situations, so they have a plan for people who are acting terribly and a place to put them. Most people don't know this, but I'm just telling you they do. So don't be out here wilding out thinking nothing gonna happen to you. Starvation. People are not prepared physically, mentally, and emotionally to watch people starve. You just don't know what that's like. You've watched people on television, you've watched Africa, you've seen other people, refugees fleeing from war-torn countries, but we don't know what that is like here. The psychological toll that it is going to take on mothers and children, especially, and men who can't provide for their families, who did not prepare their families properly, it's going to be devastating. And living without the rule of law is going to be like, I don't know how people are going to make it in cities because there's so many people in such a small confined area. They're just going to be perping on each other. And police are, again, going to abandon posts because they're not going to work for free, because there ain't going to be no money. If there's no bank, there won't be any money transfers. People are not going to be getting paid with checks. How are you going to pay people if there's no power? There won't be any grocery stores. There won't be a lot of infrastructures. So, if you can't pay people and keep order, people are going to just be lawless. And that's when you're going to see, all sorts of things happen. So this deputy executive director asked, how will the average soldier respond to a radical and unrecognizable new life filled with utter confusion and deep desperation without access to regular food and effective oversight? Now you think about these young soldiers. Now we got some old heads in the military, sure. But the majority of these young people that have been drafted, like this new generation of kids, and I'm sorry, they ain't gonna make it. They're just not. A lot of them are not gonna make it. So it's gonna be leaving us civilians in a really desperate situation, which in terms leaves the home front in a bad place. So you're going to have to protect yourselves, which means you need to have weapons or protection power tools in your house. Figure out what kind of power tools you're going to use and put them up in there. Military bases do not have the sustenance of food and water purification to sustain their forces and their families more than briefly, which is sad. But again, just makes me think that a lot of people are going to abandon their post. The average U.S. service member consumes roughly 2,000 pounds of food each year. Based on the basal metabolic rate, a male weighing 195 pounds will need to consume approximately 72,968 calories per month, more than 875,000 calories per year. Multiply that by how many people the base commander is responsible for. Simple math tells the hard truth. Requiring commanders to ask, when the logistics and supply chain is broken countrywide, where will all this food come from? Does your base have enough stockpiled food to last a week, let alone months to a year? How can the military effectively command and control a force it cannot even feed? Now, I'm not saying that, the government doesn't have a plan. Maybe they have some food set aside some other place. They have some other type of logistics. I don't know, but you know, I'm I don't I just don't know how it's going to be done. I just don't. Leaders must ask themselves, can my unit sustain in the fight if hit locally or regionally with a combination of NIMPs and high-powered microwave weapons? Does your unit have the right standard operating procedures? Do you have the resources to protect communications equipment with Faraday cages? What companies can assist with tactical vehicle hardening efforts? The Marine Corps has a history of being reactive instead of proactive. In Iraq, tactical vehicles were destroyed by improvised explosive devices. The service should have learned lessons about this from Vietnam. Instead, we watched as Marines and sailors were maimed and died. Had we been proactive, history might have turned out differently. We should be training for the next fight. Marine Corps Doctrine Publication 1 mentions the word initiative at least 45 times, meaning like take the initiative. Let's not be too late to take the initiative so we don't have to ask questions later about why we didn't see this coming and why we didn't prepare for it. As the old notion has it, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and let God do the rest. And that is how I'm going to end it here. I want to hope for the best, but faith without work is dead. So that means y'all got to prepare. Prepare for the worst means worst case scenario. Read this and read some of the other things that they're talking about related to World War III and the escalation between the West and Russia and China, and prepare. Don't think, oh, we're the best country in the world, nothing can ever happen. Let me tell you, this is a new day. People ain't scared of us anymore, and people are going to try America. You, my friend, will be a casualty one way or the other. If you're not a casualty because of a direct hit, you're going to be a casualty because you did not prepare. You don't have non-perishable foods. You don't have a way to cook food should you not have power for a year. Um, you don't know how you're going to get from point A to point B or survive if you don't have a job because your job doesn't work. They don't have a way to power their company, so you're not going to get a paycheck. You can't go to the bank to get money. Your car doesn't work. Like, you have a lot of things that you have to worry about. Let me read one more thing if I can find it. This talked about um, the amount of time that um, I don't know if it's here. Oh, let me go back to this. It said the report concluded that 1 year after a large scale EMP or CME, 9 of every 10 Americans would be dead from a variety of causes stemming from the attack. So, if we have an EMP or CME or whatever type of attack, nuclear attack, we could be out of power for a year or more, throwing us back into the Stone Ages, essentially. Now, again, like I said, Black people, if we really got to get gritty with it. We can do this because we was built for this. Our ancestors were slaves. We came from people who lived off the land. It's in our DNA. Now a lot of y'all boule and bougie, but you can do it. There are a lot of white people who grew up camping and poor or whatever. I think poor people are going to fare better than any other people. But you need to prepare for a year or more without power. It means you need to have charcoal and butane, um, generators, gas, extra gas to you know keep your stove running. If you got gas powered, it's not gas powered. If you have gas, how are you gonna pay your gas bill if there's no power? Would they cut your gas off? Um, if you have a wood stove, do you have a chainsaw, other materials to make sure your wood stove keeps going in the event there's a grid down situation? There are a lot of things that you have to think about. And so I want to encourage you to read this article really good. Click on some of the links inside of it because there are a lot of good reports here. And think about how you can fortify your homes and your families and your lives to sustain and endure to the end. If you have multiple people that you got to take care of, you need to be thinking about how you're going to do that. If you're going to, um, you know, if you're a first responder, are you having a heart to heart with yourself, talking to your family? How long are you going to work? Are you going to abandon post? What does that look like? Um, are you having a discussion with your family? If you're in the military, you have children in the military, you want to have a conversation. What happens? What does that look like? What if your child is overseas? What if your child is across the country and fighting and they don't have enough food, they don't have water, they don't have a way to communicate? What happens? These are questions that we need to be asking because they don't have an answer for us. As you can see, they don't know nothing. All they know is what we don't have and what we haven't done. And so this article is written by someone that is in the military. I take it as a warning. And so many things that have happened where people have, stepped out of their comfort zones or broken protocols to let us know because they care about people. I'm sharing this with you because I care about people. I love y'all. I want y'all to be well. I don't want anyone to perish that can hear the sound of my voice. So if you could share this with people in your social circles, your family, your friends, please do because it's just a matter of time. And for Black people, we're going to be caught off guard because we are so distracted about so many other things that don't matter. So again, I want you to hope for the best, but understand faith without work is dead. So you need to be preparing for the worst, which means going to the store, buying those non-perishable goods, stocking up on medications, hygiene products, sanitary napkins. If you have young children, you need to be buying clothes and things for the next couple of years. You need to be figuring out how you're going to make money and take care of yourself if your job fails, if you don't have a job because your job doesn't have power. Um, Most importantly, you need to lean on the Most High. There are things that are going to happen that are beyond our control. There's going to be a lot of suffering, a lot of carnage, a lot of lawlessness. We don't know what we're going to have to do to protect our families or to feed our families. But I'm asking you to pick up that Bible and read it. Pray and ask God for forgiveness. Ask the Most High to, guide you on what to do. Do some research and figure out, what are the risks for your area? What are the risks for your family members and yourself particularly? Repent, because one thing about it is when death comes, it's not a respect of persons, and so you need to have we all need to have grace and mercy poured on us so that we can sustain ourselves during this time, and also so that we can help others and have discernment about who we need to help and who we should not help, because we're not going to be able to help everybody. There are going to be some people who are going to literally harm us, and they're going to be using all kinds of tactics. So you can't fall for the dog or the innocent child ringing your doorbell. It's just a lot of stuff that you're going to have to pray and ask for discernment about during these wicked times, because people are wicked. All right, so I'm going to end here. Again, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and let God do the rest. Put your hope and faith and trust in the Most High. Let Him guide us, let Him protect us. Let us lean on Him, ask Him to take our hand and lead us out of this mess. Keep us safe from harm and the wicked ones who are, wanting to do harm to us, and give us everything we need to make it to the end. That's all we can do. That is all we can do. So, with that said, please like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to my Rumble and Odyssey channels in case this channel is taken down by YouTube, because they are censoring us like crazy. And, you know, all we can do right now is pray. We are in a bad situation. And the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, is stick your head in the sand and act like it's just any other day, because it's not. You can live your life, but you should also be preparing for the worst. And if people in the military are telling you that have served, and they're on the inside, I think it is foolish for us to be out here thinking we're going to be okay. All right. So, with that, y'all, I'm out. Please leave me your comments below. Give me your feedback. I appreciate it. And I'll try to respond to as many comments as I can. I'm out.